Hi everyone, my name is Jenny Rain. Thanks for coming to today's SiteVisits webinar. We are glad to have you here with us at Greenfield Belzer. Leading our presentation today is Joe Walsh. He is a Principal and Creative Director at Greenfield Belzer, and today he will be covering site visits. There's a couple of housekeeping items as we get ready to start. Please make sure that your phones are muted, as this will prevent background noise and ensure everyone can hear the full presentation. And please feel free to ask any questions of our speakers through the presentation panel. You can chat them directly in the questions area of your GoToMeeting panel or under the chat area, and we will grab them. You also can join us via social media during the presentation. We'll be tweeting from our own GBLTV handle using the hashtag GBSiteVisits. So with that said, I will hand things off to Joe.
Thank you, Jenny. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we sure can.
All right, this is great. So also thank you all for joining today. This is our, we give webinars about 4 times a year. This one's the most popular to date, so hopefully we're on to something. I also want to just take a moment and thank the rest of the marketing team, Dylan and Caitlin and Nanther and Monica and the rest of us. We've put a lot of time and effort into this. We think it's literally the culmination of hundreds of hours of work, even though we haven't totaled the timesheets. And it was a labor of love, so we're going to share the love today, as it were. So here's the agenda in 3 parts. First, and we're going to spend most of the time on the third part of this agenda, but up front I'm going to explain why we created site visits. And then I'm going to walk you through the methodology and the criteria we used for this catalog, which is indeed a catalog, and we expect it to sustain and keep it fresh, moving forward. And then third, agenda-wise, where we'll spend most of the time is you look at the title here, we'll provide the dish. So we're going to talk about, we've organized our findings or our observations into 8 trends that amount to best practices, and so you get to see what others are up to, and hopefully take some ideas to apply to your own site, whether it's to improve it now or to do something different with it with a new launch in the future. Okay? So let me just move one slide forward, and I'll just check with you, Jenny, to make sure you're seeing my second slide. We okay there?
Yep, I see it.
Great. Thanks so much. So this is what we've done. I think it's self-evident, but I'll explain it anyways. We looked at 200 sites, and I'll explain the methodology of what we looked at why in a moment. They from 3 sectors: accounting, consulting, obviously we're within our professional service boundaries here, and we awarded 28 green ribbons, as in green fields, get it? And we'll talk to you about those criteria and a little bit more about what's behind those opinions, because they're opinions. Everybody can be their own judge, but nevertheless, that's what we've done. I think it's very clear to everybody on the surface that SiteVisits is a website. If you haven't been to it, we invite you to go see it. It's sitevisits.gbltd.com or / You can find it right off our main site, but it's a mini site. It's a thought leadership site, and it has hundreds of pages in it, and we're going to sample a lot of them today. So having said that, when we did these reviews, when we created this catalog, I think it'll make perfect sense to you that we picked 5 pages to look at for each firm. The big 5, as it were, are the home page, what the home page looks like on mobile, you see in the lower left, what a news and events or thought leadership section of the site looks like, obviously what a biography looks like. Most firms do have biographies, and then service and industry pages, samples of the best practices that are going on, not only on that page, but all 5. The other thing I promised I'd do before I go into criteria is just talk about why we did this and you know, it's interesting, and you can't quote us on this, but we did look it up, and so we think we're pretty close. We think the first professional service firm website was published 20 years ago in 1996, and that's really not too long ago if you think about it. And it was the same year that The Economist and Pizza Hut came online. And what's really interesting is they weren't called websites at that point. If you remember, if any of you are old enough like me to remember, it was called a web page. And, you know, for marketers at that point, it was really a curiosity. It was an afterthought. It wasn't central to what we did. It was kind of just something new to toy with. And now it's the opposite of that. A website is no longer a page. Obviously, it's thousands of pages. And it's central to everything we do. And so the reason we did site visits, I'll just use this as an example, is to see how far we've come. And where we're headed next. So this is on Hamilton's page, circa 2005. It's interesting, you know, a lot of our pages look like at that moment in time, and some of our pages, some of our websites still look like that. Shame on us, but the point is, you know, for a number of reasons, including bandwidth, including messages, including the way consume information, sites are much more vibrant, they're much more robust, they have much more information, they are much more impressive. You know, they host video, and they look like this. This is Booz Allen Hamilton circa today. And so what we're really doing with site visits, the reason we did this study is to figure out, you know, what's working and what's next. And it's their tagline, Inspire the Future, but we thought it was a perfect kind of summary of what we're trying to do with site visits, is inspire the future of websites. So there you have it. Today's realities, this is also part of why we did this study. Again, I've already made this statement. There's now thousands of pages. It's no longer a web page. We have this new responsibility to be device friendly, whether it's mobile or tablet or desktop or widescreen. There's clearly a content arms race we're going to hear more about in a moment, and that connects to the next bullet, which is this pressure we're all under. These are the lead generation tools, and do that with content. And, you know, you move from, you know, an online brochure into some kind of device that helps you fill your pipeline, and that tacks into this next bullet, which is the increasingly sophisticated CMS and other tools that all need to be integrated to make the promise of digital marketing a reality. And our point is, there's all this technology driving our sites. You know, in this diagram that we put together in the spring, kind of tries to bring some sense to it. But you know, you think about it as a system of nodes, and the website's here in the middle, but it's connected to our email, and it's connected to our SEO, obviously, SEM, our social, our blogs, our events. And amidst all that technology and all that innovation and all that kind of advancement, if you will, you know, what we're telling our clients a lot is, yeah, it's all about digital, but let's not forget, clients don't read code. Technology is only half the equation here. So when you get to a firm like Bain Consulting, they have, and by the way, they're not a client of ours, they have one of the most sophisticated CMSs we've come across. It's tied into CRM. It's you know, highly one-to-one. It's just the absolute state of the art. But what they're also really good at is good old-fashioned marketing communication. They make it easy to get through. They have great writing. They have superior content. They have good design. And all we're suggesting is we're going to focus on less on the technology today. And we understand it's important, but all of those good marketing communication principles are even more important here and now of today's websites. So last bit before we get into the criteria, this is our new site, which will be going up in hopefully about a month or so. Jenny's working on us with that. We're her worst client. But in any event, our point is, you know, that we do these four things: get clear, get noticed, get chosen, and get results for clients. We help them do those things. But when it comes to design of sites, without some kind of strategy and clear message, you're just doing design and you're putting lipstick on you-know-what, and without compelling content, not just content, but compelling content, you're going to have a tough time. We'll give you tips for each today. So the methodology is pretty simple. I'm going to touch on it quickly. We looked at 200 sites, and the analog 100 was our go-to list for law. The accounting 100 was our go-to list for accounting firms. We zeroed it down to 50. And Vault 50 consulting firm prestige list was our go-to list for consulting firms. And then when you get into the site, you see we organized it by head count. So if your firm isn't in this catalog we created, it isn't because we don't think we have a great site. It's because we had to draw the line somewhere. We picked 200, and that 200, as I say, resulted in hundreds of hours of work. So we'll do our best to add to this and keep it fresh. But that's why we looked at who we looked at. So, for instance, in the consulting firm space, you see the 50 largest firms ordered by 1 to 50. You could argue that IBM really isn't a consulting firm, but they can call their consulting arm indeed that, all the way down to the Cambridge Group number 50. And you see a similar list when you get on the site for law and accounting. So that's the reasoning behind the 200. Now the criteria for our comments, you can see them on the site. I'll just touch on them briefly here, and then we'll get into the dish. But again, we're looking at 5 pages. And if you click on any one of these 5 in our criteria section, for instance, on the home page, what we were looking at was not only overall impression, but is there some clear message? Is it about the client? Does it suffer from too much information? Is it a compelling landing page? Or in today's world, is it a compelling set of landing pages? Because many of them scroll. On mobile, we look to see if brand messages kind of carried to the mobile device. We looked at whether it was really easy to navigate, using these hamburger menus. We looked if the content was right for mobile. Sometimes people put their whole site on mobile, and maybe that's too much information. We're not drawing a conclusion there. We're just making a observation. We looked at best practices for thought leadership. We'll talk more about those a little bit deeper into this presentation, but mostly we're looking at if our news, events, and publication centers moved away from a list of things we're invested in content-wise into more of a curated editorial type presentation like a business magazine. And then on biographies, we looked at things like, are the photos high quality? Do visitors get a portal into the firm and into this person's background? Is it more like a digital experience and less like a resume reading experience? Those kind of things. And then lastly, criteria was on service pages. We looked at things like, could you scan, which we'll talk about? Was it video? Was it rich with content, like things people could use as opposed to descriptions of industry or service areas? And then was there good experience or credentials that a visitor could, really find with relative ease? Okay. Last thing on, just setting this all up, we applied MOM's rules to our reviews, and that goes something like this: if you don't have something nice to say, you don't say anything, or as my mom used to say, if you don't have something nice to say, you should lie your ass off. But in any event, you'll see in our reviews that we really took the high road. This was not criticism. We found something we liked on every site we reviewed. It could have been a design element. It could have been the way they handle mobile. It could have been the way they treat content. It could have been a leadership study they promoted. It could have been just about anything, but we ask you as you wind your way through the site, go back to it hopefully for more inspiration to just, read what we had to say, because we spent a lot of time thinking about it, and we found a lot of good stuff virtually within every site we visited. Okay? Last thing, the green ribbons. There are green ribbons kind of awarded everywhere. They kind of map to our criteria, but some of them are outside the bounds of the criteria. For instance, I'll give you an example. Ernst & Young's green ribbon for connecting their branded thought leadership to a brand promise, which we'll talk more about in a moment. And you can view the entire list of winners, and we're going to be adding to this list, and so on and so forth. So that's the setup. And here's the pitch. And Jenny, I'll take a breath here and see if there's any questions at this point, just on like the setup and methodology before I move into the heart of this presentation.
I haven't got any questions so far, but we're hearing you great, so keep going.
Okay, so thank you. So here's what we saw. And again, we've summarized it into 7 broad observations. And some of these are going to just be like, they're probably very obvious to you, but I think it's really interesting when you illustrate them with, glimpses of these 200 sites, how the trends come to life. I hope that's the case, but nevertheless, we'll start with observation 1. And what we observe is that sites broadly lack pervasive brand promises. And what we mean by that is some kind of value proposition. So you can call that a tagline if you want. We don't limit it to taglines, but it's interesting when we added up all the numbers, we found that accounting firms, and we don't have an explanation why, but they're more prone to taglines. 66% of them do it or just do it, and they do have some kind of organizing theme or tagline. Whereas consulting in law firms are less apt to do that. And I'm going to give you examples of firms that do have an organizing theme. So Ernst & Young actually has a brilliant brand positioning campaign out that's been part of a brand makeover over the last 12 to 18 months. It's you see it here in the upper right. Well, you can barely see it, so I'll read it to you. It says "Building a Better Working World." But they ask questions, and they do this whether it's on the website or in their proposal material or in their ads. The better the question, the better the answer, the better the world works. All right. So that's a really nice example of a brand promise in our definition. Polsinelli, the law firm based in the heartland but national now, has a similar kind of pervasive element in real challenges, real answers, which you see on every page of the site. The site's organized around that theme. Dorsey, which launched about 4 weeks ago, client of Jenny's, works under the premise always ahead. And you see that virtually brought to life in some way on every page of their new site. And so our point was twofold. One, we don't see a lot of these brand promises, which we think is a mistake. And 2, we don't see them being brought to life on every page of the site. So it's kind of like lipstick. And so we're going to give you an example of a very basic articulation and explanation of what a firm means with its brand promise. So this is Friedman. This is an accounting firm, 300 professionals in Manhattan, probably the busiest, most competitive market on the planet for CPA firms. Friedman's story is actually a really interesting story. Their clients tend to be very powerful individuals, real estate moguls, media executives, sports and entertainment leaders, and they need high-powered CPA skills, but they demand, because of who they are, concierge-type attention. So that comes through in this firm's brand promise, powerful, personal, but it is beat to death on every page, which we really advocate. So when you get into the people landing page, how to search for partners, they promise more time with the partners, personal assets, meet a few. When you get to bios, it's brought to life. When you get into About Us, the brand promise is part of the story. When you get to things like the industry landing page, powerful industry knowledge meets powerful personal connections. When you get in an industry landing page like automotive, it's in the act as well, performance with personal handling. So that's what we mean by pervasive. And again, two things, we don't see a lot of brand promises that are either evident, and we don't see them being driven all the way through our websites today. Okay. So careers is brought into this act for Friedman, and as is their offline activities like advertising. When it's mission critical, will help you go boldly, or when it's your turn to move, agility is everything, or you know, when business is your passion, will help you perform fully, so on and so forth. So that's what we saw in the 200. We saw kind of a lack of brand positioning that was distinct, and then a lack of pervasive use of those messages site-wide. So the second trend or observation is that, and this is obvious, you guys are getting this, responsive design is really trending, but it's not, at least in what we're seeing in the 200, it's not trending quickly enough. It's only 3.5 years old. We started to do it and figure it out about 2 years ago. Other firms are really good at it too, but it's interesting now, almost every RFP you get almost demands responsive, so firms are catching up. But when you look at the numbers, you see that only 1/3 of the 200 top law firm sites are truly responsive. A lot of you have done the stopgap, which was understandable, which is to make a separate mobile site, and are making your way to fully responsive. It's interesting to note that accounting firms, almost half of them now are of the top 50 are responsive, and consulting firms are ahead of the curve. Fully half of them are now responsive sites. And if you don't know what that term means, I'll just spend 2 seconds on it. CKD, which has a great site, by the way, is probably on the road to making there's a mobile-friendly experience. So being not mobile-friendly, what we're talking about is what you see on your desktop is the same as what you see on your mobile, and you can't see anything. As opposed to a Capgemini, which does wonderful on all devices from the consulting world, or Morgan Lewis. By the way, neither of these are our clients. We've given as many kudos to you know, firms who we don't work with as we have to our own clients. And Morgan Lewis did a bang-up job with their rebrand and their new site, which is fully responsive, as did our client. This is Dixon Hughes Goodman. And the point is that even very big firms, Deloitte is a fully responsive site. Even the biggest firms with the most content can work in the responsive world. Okay, so takeaway is A, responsive is all the rage. B, there's a lot of catching up to do. And C, if you're not mobile friendly at all, MDOT is still a quick and easy way to get it done. All right. So observation 3, this is a kind of a passion of Greenfield Bellsworth's. It's also kind of a pet peeve, but sites are still dominated by words versus visual content, and we don't just mean pretty pictures. And I'll show you what we mean in a moment, but if you do the math, we see that whether it's accounting, consulting, or legal, you know, close to 80% of them are still dominated by words, things like industry and service profile. So I'll show you what I mean. And I'm not picking on either of these firms. On the left is a big law firm, and on the right is a big accounting firm, but both are dominated in their descriptions of their services, a wall of words that visitors literally run into, and you're forced to read, which is hard to do on the web. What we're seeing trending and what we're advocating passionately are firms like Wise & Mazar, which is an accounting firm in the top 20, again, not a client, but they've done a real nice job of, this is highly substantive information, but it's visual. We'll tell you over and over again, and you've probably heard it before if you joined our program, that eye tracking studies on websites suggest that eyes first go to shapes and colors and images, pictures, and headlines, and last to words. And part of the reason for that is we're so busy. The other part is it's hard to read on the web. It hurts your eyes, and it's slower to read on the web than it is offline. So practices like these represent best practices. Baker McKenzie does a really nice job of balancing, if you will, visual with verbal. Just another, this is a side note, but their page is dominated by, and we're going to talk more about this, by news I can use versus a description of the practice. Cognizant, the consulting firms, frankly, they're kind of always ahead of the rest of the professions, but they just nail this. Cognizant is an IT consulting firm, and this is what we really mean by visual content. It isn't decorative, it's substantive, but it's it's designed to help you get through it with relative ease. And probably the absolute a service page. Accenture redid their site, relaunched it late this summer. It's fully responsive. So in terms of visual content, it's all visual content, and it's fully substantive. It's all that and more, and it's just beautiful. And it also, in their case, the design's brilliant because they've used their kind of logo device as a design mechanism to break up all the content. So, takeaway here, fewer words, the better, but still with lots of rich content, just delivered in a way that's more visual or easier for us all when we get there during our busy days to make our way through. Okay? A couple of other items on content for these pages. Your buyers are only interested in two types of content. That is, they're interested in your podcasts, webinars, e-alerts, white papers, studies, even videos with professional point of views. That's what we mean by ideas, and that's countered with the other thing they're really interested in is your related experience, who you worked for, what you did, and how that turned out. So, you get to, this firm has since been acquired, but they do a great job of the latter type of content, which is, at a glance, this is their media and technology page, giving you a sense of who they worked with in a very visual way to get through it all. All right? By the way, that's the length of the practice description, which is kind of noteworthy. And so you take that to a different industry, sports and entertainment, and this is their set of credentials for that particular segment. Okay, and some of you have been on these programs with us, have seen this chart. Still bears reiterate what I've just said about visual content, but you can think of content as a salad bar on these pages. Historically, we've used a heaping helping of text, but you want to balance that out with things like tables and maps and charts and lists and other devices. McKinsey is kind of, the granddaddy of doing this really well. We're showing, this is our client before, Pepper Hamilton, and this is, what the web pages used to look like, and this is what they look like after. So, for instance, a location page, which would have 3 paragraphs of text saying we're in many locations and we're national. You don't need to say that. You can show that, and with a little interactivity, actually bring it to life as well. Here's my illustration here of colors and shapes getting into the substantive communication act here on the capabilities page. And by the way, all of these principles don't apply just to your website. They apply to your pitch materials. This is a pitch book done in Power before for their lateral recruiting of senior attorneys. and it was just drier than white toast. But it's interesting, the after is all of the stuff that was in the original, all of those words are now in the new pitch book. They're just delivered in a visual way. So when you get scared about, I don't want to say scared, when you get intimidated by the notion of redoing all your content, more often than not, whether it's a new web project or something else, you don't really have to redo your content. You already have the content in most cases. You have to rethink how you present the content and make it more visual. Okay? Let me take a breath. Jenny, any questions so far?
Not yet. Nope.
Great. So let's keep motoring, and I see we're right on schedule here. So I'm going to introduce number 4 to you, and I've already alluded to this. But clearly, as we looked at all these sites, thought leadership or content marketing is not only is it all the rage, but it's an arms race. And it was started, you know, years ago by, I don't know if there's any of the consulting firm pioneers on the phone with us, but McKinsey and Bain and the Big Four started this, and they're masters of thought leadership. And the law firms and the smaller, you know, the second-tier accounting firms are literally copying that model. And what is resulting is so much content that we're now kind of, I don't want to say all on par, but much of it, the job now is, okay, how do we get ours paid attention to? And so we'll share a couple of things that we see trending under this masthead of thought leadership arms race. Half of the consulting firms here up on the top have batched their news and events and publications, which used to be separate navigation items on websites, into something called an insight center. And it's interesting, just the term insights, which is a great term, nothing that term, is becoming overused. So half of the consulting firms are calling these thought leadership spaces insights. 40% of accounting firms have batched them into something called insights. And law firms are kind of catching up fast. They've put their news and events and publications into something called insights. The point 1 for you is a good point, which is we've collected all of our content, you know, really up market, and we've made them on websites, which I'll show you in a moment. We've made them into these insight centers. The other point is we're all calling them insight centers, so let's be offensive and call them something else if we can. But I'll just illustrate the point here. Like so Pepper Hamilton, you know, one of our favorite recent examples. What they've done here is what I just described to you. They've taken all their news about the market. They've taken their news about you know, what's trending in the market. They've taken their podcasts, their webinars, their publications, their white papers, and they've built them into this you know, this curated news-like resource center. And it has an editorial mindset. It's got a lead feature. You know, it's got iconography that makes it easy to work its way through. Obviously, it works on all devices. It's shown on a tablet. But the point is that if you don't have one like this, if you have the old back of the phone book listing of all your publications, and we saw a bunch of those, and I won't pull one up here to pick on anybody. The future looks more like this than it does like the back of your phone book. Okay, so another nice example of this is Cognizant, again from the consulting world. What we loved about their resource center was it moved, and we're going to talk about movement in a moment. It moved from north to south and east to west. It's got a lot of that scrolling that we're used to. You know, you flick your finger and it moves up and down, but it also has a very robust search feature that's dedicated just to its, you know, all the volumes of its research and thought leadership, which we think is really nice. Dixon Hughes does a very nice job on 2 levels. They're using the illustrated links that I talk about, the visual content. I'll make some further points on that in a few minutes, but the point is that it also has this editorial kind of sensibility to it, and you know, it's packed with information, but it's easy to get through. I can call out 6 or 7 others. I'll mention a couple here that I don't have visuals for top of mind. I'd recommend highly that you go to the Deloitte site for inspiration. It could not be more packed, you know, with very valuable content, but they do a really nice job of making that easy to get through and calling attention to what they believe are the things you need to pay attention to most in the here and now. McKinsey does an outstanding job of this with visual content and information graphics. So there's other really nice examples, but my main takeaway for you is twofold, just to repeat the points I've made. One is that, you know, more and more of us are investing in you know, stuff about the market, thought leadership content, as opposed to firm news. And we're getting more sophisticated on our sites about presenting that in a way that's more like Wired magazine than it is like the, you know, the Manhattan phone book. So there you have it. By the way, on the point of insight centers in the word insight, so Cognizant calls it latest thinking. Dixon Hughes has done something clever. They call it DHG views. But we are seeing firms start to brand, or if you will, sub-brand their thought leadership efforts. And Dixon Hughes has done a nice job with this. So it's not only this set of pages on their website, but for instance, you know, they have roughly 35 offices across the Southeast and a little bit out of that footprint. And you can imagine all those offices putting on all their local seminars and webinars. It's a whole lot of activity. Dixon Hughes took a cue and kind of sub-branded it as the Executive Briefing Series, so that whichever office you are in, you would always be going to an Executive Briefing Series to get DHB views. And one of the other smart things they've done is they've pre-packaged these from central marketing into, if you will, meeting in a box, so the local marketers, all they need to do is use these sub-branded tools to put on, you know, they just change the dates and change the topic, and they change the location, and they change some of the words in the invites, and bam, you have a firm-branded thought leadership initiative. So we're seeing that you know, the Big Four kind of made a living on that, continues to. We're seeing law firms start to catch up to that. Consulting firms are also very good at it. McKinsey Quarterly is the best example. You know, for those of you who haven't heard me on that topic before, it's ironic. You know, McKinsey Quarterly was first published in the 60s as a way to address the commoditization of strategy consulting, and that's you know, was essentially the grand sire of thought leadership today. And now the rest of us are all catching up. By the way, SiteVisits is a big piece of thought leadership. So in any event, we take some of that medicine and apply it to our own marketing. The next topic, and we're seeing, I'd say, and I don't have the absolute statistics to share with you today, but of the 200 sites we visited, I think roughly 25% of them had some kind of microsite within the site itself, and that could take many shapes. It could be a career site. It could be a research study site, like the PricewaterhouseCoopers annual CEO study is a wonderful microsite. We saw issue microsites. A couple of law firms have really done a nice job taking issues like, litigation in the energy sector. Our client Steptoe and Johnson did a great microsite and research study on issues below the surface on shale gas production. We've seen it done in law firms for merger and acquisition trends. If I don't have it right, don't sue me, but I think it's Wilmer Hale that's been doing it's Wilmer Cutler. Well, not Wilmer Hale. That's my old brain working, but the point is they've been doing an IPO trend study for years and an M&A trend study for years. Cooley has a magnificent microsite called Cooley Go, which is dedicated to emerging companies. I'm kind of rambling here, but the point is that we're seeing the trend to more microsites that are issue or audience or topic specific, A, and B, we're seeing those sites really smartly designed, and they're really becoming quite good. And so we're going to give you one example. This is a pat on our own client's back, so take it for what it is. But again, all the firms I just mentioned, Cooley Go, we love it, got a green ribbon for us. Go check that out. Are as well designed, if not better than this one we're showing you. But we're showing you this because we know the story really well. So Hemingway is a law firm, like 30% of the time, 70% of the time, it's a management organization, and they work with very high net worth families. This initiative is targeted, by the way, it's just launched, it's targeted at the next generation of existing clients, so the 20-somethings or early 30-somethings who are coming into their wealth. It has a vibe that's much more modern to appeal to that generation. It's organized around real-life issues. It is navigated either by topic, like buying a home or doing my first financial plan or college planning in advance, and or it's organized by stage in the life cycle, like early planning, things to do when life takes off, like your first estate plan or a home purchase, like on home purchase. And there's a great article that's very well written that, by the way, needs to be read on the 8 tips for buying a house. So the point is, this is a collection of roughly 30 articles on 4, 20 or 30 something on the process of early wealth management, and it's just packaged in a website, in this case a microsite, that is very much for them. And frankly, it's designed completely different than the main firm site, which is addressing a demographic which is 50, 60, 70 something. Okay? So we're seeing a lot of this trending, and we're seeing these sites get, just smarter and better, and containing all this content that I've alluded to that's mushroom. So for instance, just to finish this example off, I get to a different stage of the life cycle expanding, and I can click on our go add section, and up pops the thought leadership. All right, so observation 5, and this is a lot of you who have what we'll call older school sites are probably very interested in this topic. Those of you who have relaunched have hopefully adopted visual content and moving elements, but we're seeing it trending very quickly from static websites to sites that perform more like television programming. and I don't just mean it's video-based. They're more like video games. And again, they're not just for the next gen. I'm an early 50-something, and my attention is grabbed by movement just as my kids' attention are grabbed by movement. So what we're seeing trend-wise are sites that have lots of movement within the site. I'm sorry, I'm not on a live feed, so I'm going to describe the animation here. So Foley isn't our client, but they've done a phenomenal job, building a site that has lots of moving dynamics in it. So, for instance, when you go to this site, I encourage you to go there. This is the law firm for those of you not in the law firm space. When you go there, this ocean is actually a moving picture. That's one piece of movement. When you scroll up and down, these circles kind of go from large to small, and they fit into focus. All right, and so we mean movement in three ways. One, there is the pictures are actually animated. Two, the content as visual moves on the page as you move with the page. And the third one is that the pages are actually moving these days. They move from top to bottom to right, because that's what we're used to doing, particularly on our phones and our tablets. So the designs are responding to the behaviors we are all now experience with. Number one, and a cool quotient. So when Winston and Sean launched, and a client of ours, they put it up here for innovation. This launched 2 years ago. It just blew the legal minds of most of us in the marketing space, because it was all movement. The design was user experience first, in movement first. And I apologize again. I just asked you to go to Winston and experience yourself as you scroll from north to south or east to west. Every element on the page moves with you and draws your eyeballs and makes you lean into the experience. But at the same time, it's still delivering lots of substantive information. And I just have one more example of this. And again, I apologize, it's static. But, if you go to Accenture's careers page, it says, looking to explore opportunities with Accenture. This is a 360 animated view of San Francisco. So it isn't just a still image. For those of you who are rolling your eyes saying, how in the world am I going to afford, a film, a 360-degree film of San Francisco to put on my Louisville office page? What we tell you is, go to iStock, because you can just, for about as much money as you can license, that picture of the Louisville skyline, you can probably find a video that you can license of the Louisville skyline and put it on your Louisville firm's website. So, again, if all of us do that, it's going to become a little bit overwhelming, but we're seeing this movement trend starting to grab hold. And the newer the site is, the more prone, or the more apt it is to have this kind of, for lack of a better word, wow factor. Okay? So that brings us to this next observation, which is, all right, if firms are doing this and they're moving left and right, and they've got video on them, and they have animated pictures on them, and they're imparting this wow factor. Well, they're the exception to the rule. The rule is still this, and I'm not picking on any of these firms. I'm just showing you that about 80% of the sites we visited still use this template. And I'll boil the template down to firm name, some kind of, 2x4 or 2, whatever the, the dimensions of this are, image with rotating carousel that we'll talk about in a moment, and then 3 columns of news. And so there's an accounting firm, there's a really great big law firm based out of London, and there's a really great big consulting firm based in DC, I bet. And they all have the same template. And so, again, our point is that this old template, like this old house without the charm, is still too common. And if you're thinking about redoing your site, if you're on the verge of redoing your site, you're probably trying to get out of this template. Kudos to you. But at the same time, what we're beginning to see emerge is that the new sites, which are really impressive and deserve all kinds of rounds of applause for being innovative and new and fresh, we see the new sites starting to adopt a new template, which is also becoming common. So Jackson Lewis is not our client. They used to be our client. They redid their site recently. They did a bang-up job. It's really beautiful. And the way it works is that as you move north to south, you know, this color white will be replaced by a new band of color with a new section of content. And it's beautiful. But what we're suggesting is Perkins Coie, which also got a green ribbon for us for being client-centric in its site. It's a beautiful site, great content. And it was one of the first to do one of these kind of moving north to south things. But this is what I mean by a color block with a band of another band, and it moves to a new issue. On all the new sites launched, not all, but on many of the new sites launched, we're seeing this new template becoming common. And I just want to reiterate my point in 2 ways. Number one, like mega kudos for those who have paved the new territory for us and have been the early adopters. When we showed you Winston and Foley, they fall into this camp too. But the challenge now is, what do you do next? That's a little bit different from these trailblazers. So a nice example of one that we awarded a green ribbon to. This is not a site we designed. It just, we thought it was, you know, very innovative. You have to go to it to check out the design, but it moves. It's got visual content. It's got you know, video. It's got all the things we talk about in a great site. But it's completely different than one we had seen elsewhere. Frankly, we found it a little bit hard to navigate, so you need to balance the cool factor with the, hey, can I find what I want and not get lost factor? But that's the challenge, you know, especially the designers on the call for what comes next. So this thing we touched on a little bit, this rotating carousel. The reason rotating carousels came into vogue probably around 6 or 7 years ago was that if you couldn't decide what to put on your homepage, it allowed you to talk about a whole bunch of things on your homepage. So it was more for the internal audience than it was for the external audience. It was a way for you, if you will, to advertise what you were interested in promoting. So these carousels are very common. 3/4 of law firm pages have them. 2/3 of consulting firm pages have them. 2/3 of accounting firm pages have them. So there's WilmerHale, which has great content, but it uses the carousel, and you know what I mean. Like if I click on this thing, it's going to rotate to the next piece of content. There's Ropes and Gray just across the street. Same difference with a different carousel device. And then there's Hall on Night with its own device. Now, not only do these use the old template, but they use the carousel. I think, by the way, we have nothing against carousels, but what we're suggesting to you is two things. One is that they're so common that they're becoming almost expected. And two is that we think the opportunity for firms these days is to really stand and declare for a period of time what's most important. And this comes back to this thought leadership arms race. So for instance, McKinsey, not only does it have a unique design amid all the other firms that you would look at in the professional service space. By the way, this is more than 3 years old now. But they, once a month, they focus on one thing on their homepage. In this case, it was raise your digital quotient, and they spent a month on that topic. And this month, women in balance. So my point is that they are doing less content better, and they are raising the most important thought leadership initiative to the marquee space on their homepage, and not giving equal time to all, all pieces of content. And I know that's a little thing to do, and I'm just raising it as a possibility if you're on the site. Okay? So, give me any questions at this point that I can answer for the crowd.
Yep, we've got a couple that have come in. One of the questions is about the insights section, and the question is, if insights are out, because so many people are using them, are there any other ideas that you have on how to re-language this section?
Yeah, so I'll not go all the way back because it's too many slides back, but let's do this. So, I mean, for instance, the first thing you see on this screen capture, when we took it, earlier this fall, is top issues for food e-tailers. This is a great piece of thought leadership, and it drives you to their litigation news blog, for food litigation news blog. So I just put it up here as a point of reference on the question, which is, if insights are out, what do you call them? There's a ton of, go pull your thesaurus, and there's resources, and there's words that mean insights that are other than insights. But I think what we're advocating more than that is there something you can tie to your brand. I know the BKD folks that we looked at before, they've put their all their insights into something called Thoughtware, which they trademarked, service marked, I should say, which was very smart. There's an accounting firm, I don't have it to show you, called Cherry Beckert. They're down, also in the southeast part of the United States. We didn't do their site, love their site, very, ultra responsive. But their thought leadership center is called Think. And it's THINC. Very clever. So, put your thinking caps on when it comes to alternative terms. I don't want to make too much about what you call it. I think the bigger point I'm trying to make, or advocating for all of you, is that your resource centers should have more of a news magazine, curated content point of view than a list of everything you've ever published. Okay?
Great.
Any others before I can move on?
Yep, we've got a couple more. One of the questions is there a certain section of the website that deserves more attention and focus in the design process? And then a similar one is, you talked about the 5 key pages. So would you say that any of the pages have more importance over another? So those are similar questions. Which is part?
Yeah, I think those are great questions. I mean, it depends where you come from. Like in the law firm world, biography pages are ultra important. I'm gonna just skip that topic for a moment because that's exactly what I'm going to talk about next. I think in the consulting, accounting, and increasingly in the law firm, all the thought leadership, their pages or microsites need a lot of emphasis. I think your service pages are very, you know, well, I don't have stats for you, but what we hear from clients is from their analytics that the most visited pages are bio and either industry or service pages. So we often design from the inside out. We work on those pages first. And I've already given you tips content-wise for some of those pages, so I won't rehash those. But they're all important. But, you know, I not to evade the question, but I'd say the ones you spend the most time on are probably, if you figure the 5 out that we've looked at, home, mobile, home, and more importantly on mobile, what the menu looks like and how big it is and easy to use, your thought leadership center, your bios, and then your a good industry service page, and be off to the races. Okay. So eyeballing the clock, I got a couple more of these to get through, 7 and 8. So this is about bios and photography, and the trend is, the observation is, in looking at these 200 sites and many others that we've seen, is that, and this is a really good thing, people photography and branded bios are getting better and better, but probably not fast enough, especially the people photography side. So when we, when we tallied up all the sites, Dylan, who I mentioned earlier, did all the legwork here, so kudos again to him, but he found that 78% of accounting firm sites have those little high school headshots, and 73% of law firms have those, and 72% of consulting firms have those puny portraits. So the point is, you know, that this tool isn't as powerful a tool as it can and should be. So you think about it, if you're a professional, practice, firm, has a big book of business, in essence, saying they should be the star of the page and they should look great. So not to pick on white and paste, but they're in the majority of firms that do it like that. And that consulting, and there's McGladrey from accounting/consulting. I mean, they're well-designed pages, not fully responsive. The point is, you know, what we're seeing the trend towards is things like Nina's bio, where she owns more of her page, and things like the Simpson Thatcher bio, we didn't do this by the way, where they've got I know the designer used to make it look this way, but all their bios look this way, and they're different, and they're great, and they look nice, and Lee owns more of this page. And the last thing we're seeing on these bios is not pictures. This is an accounting firm in the top 50 called Horn, but the bio page in this case not only had a nice photo of Joe, who's the managing partner of this, executive partner of this firm, but what we loved about every partner of this firm was they were organized around these two things: why we exist and how I can help. And they were answer those questions, and they're written from the practitioner's point of view, whether it's an industry expertise or a tax expertise or a fill in the blank. So not only are the bios becoming better in the way they capture people who are on the pages, but they're becoming more like mini sites in and of themselves, and more, I'd say, productive in the types of information they share. By the way, also part of this trend is that generally people photography getting better on the site. And by the way, it is not easy to do. We just blogged about this week. You know, if you have 650 professionals in 30 offices, but it's worth it too. we believe. And what we're seeing more of, Sullivan Cromwell's new site, which is responsive, by the way, but they do great case studies. What part of the case studies is the story of the Dodgers being sold, and some of the team that was behind that. You know, a nice style to this photo. These obviously were shot at Dodgers Stadium, but they were shot in, and it looks real, I think. You know, our client here, Dixon Hughes, does a really nice job, not only of the people being the star of the story, but these are also videos and what we're trying to do. What we used to see on the old site, and we're seeing less of, are the stock photos of you know, people playing lawyers or consultants or accountants on your site. If you still have those, please get rid of them immediately. They do, you know, they really just, you know, people just make fun of you for having that. We've heard clients make fun of you for having that. So replace it with something else, and optimally you would replace them, if you're going to use people, with your own people. And optimally, again, if you did that, you'd invest in good quality. Okay. So last thing here before we wrap up and ask for some final questions is the notion of imagery itself. When we looked at the top 200 sites, we were a little bit bummed out to find that clever or branded imagery was very rare. That still most imagery is fairly literal. And by the way, there are reasons for that, and there are occasions where that needs to happen. But if marketers in the differentiation business, you know, it's you know, it's hard to differentiate on cityscape maps, and you know, and the like. So you know, these guys are in the, Eversheds has a great site. They're in the majority. It's what a lot of firms do. You know, when you're doing a piece of thought leadership on the UK budget, you know, you show a picture of Parliament, and if you're talking about doing business in China, you do a landscape, you know, aerial view of China. So I get that, but what we're seeing less of is things like this. Warren Avertt's an accounting firm, you know, on its site, you know, their promise is all about timing together with clients, and in every picture it's two people together. And you hear you know, maybe it's granddad who's a little too old to be having that kid for himself, but you never know these days. But the idea is, you know, we might get you home a little bit earlier to take care of what's really important. And that's what we mean by clever branded imagery, and it's not always doable, and it's not always appropriate. But here's another nice example of a green ribbon winner from the accounting firm space. This is our client, LBMC. And the service line is information security. And what you would expect to see is kind of, you know, a lock on a computer. And instead, you know, you have the lovely, you know, crab who's all armored up. And, you know, that's a metaphor for information security. So we see very few instances of this. We're still big advocates for this. You might tell us to, you know, go pound sand. You don't want to do that. But we still see, you know, the opportunity to bring, if you will, you know, Madison Avenue creative into everyday websites, and you don't need to break the bank to do that. All right. So one last example on that point. We were very proud of the folks at Dixon Hughes, given them what they did and they kind of zigged where everybody else zagged. Instead of going to iStock to find an image for every page on the top of their sites and for all the pitch materials and the PowerPoints and so on, what they did in their rebranding was they invested in 20 commissioned illustrations. So they own these, and they can use them for 20 years or forever, and you won't find these on the royalty-free sites. You won't find them on any sites because they had them commissioned for them. And guess what? if you totaled what they had spent on royalty-free stock for about a year or two, that's what they spent to do custom illustrations. So it was a very smart economic move too, and it's different. So that's something we advocate. Okay, last point, and we will, Jenny will wrap the questions like you can. We saw a couple of surprises, you know, and it sounds awful and it sounds territorial, but we thought we would see the most innovation coming out of the U.S. on websites, and actually it was the opposite. Probably one of the best sites we visited in terms of overall experience, in terms of content, in terms of innovation, in terms of cleverness, in terms of like all the best practices, was out of China, in Australia. King and Wood Mallisons, they're just brand wizards, and we're kind of surprised. And again, this is, you know, our U.S.-centric view of the world. We were surprised that they were beating us all to the punch. So we go and ask you to visit that site and draw lessons, not only from that, but if you can download some of their offline material. They're just brilliantly designed. They're brilliantly written. They're visual. They are persuasive. They're compelling. They're all the things we say they ought to be. And we were surprised to see that coming, if you will, from east to west. Also, some of the biggest innovations we're seeing, this may not surprise you, are in smaller firms, even though we didn't look at the 200 or the, if you will, firms 200 to 800. We see enough of small firms in our own practice to see that many of them are doing the most vibrant things on the web. Like this is Hallmane's, an energy litigation boutique based in Houston. This is a general practice law firm based in Vermont. You know, go drm.com. This is a class action law firm on the other side of the bar. You know, it isn't really personal injury. It's in the financial securities area, but you know, their site, which was launched, Kessler, which was launched 3-4 weeks ago now, is just it's something big firms could go to school on. So in any event, when you are looking for ideas and figuring out what comes next, we hope you'll go to SiteVisits. We are going to continue to keep it fresh. When you launch a new site and you want it included, let us know. We promise to write about what we like about the site, following Mom's advice. We are planning to add 2 new sectors to SiteVisits, one for the AEC space, architect, engineer, and construction consulting, and then one for the association space within the next year. But the idea is for it to become an ongoing resource, and we hope it's something you'll visit often. Having said that, Jenny, I'll turn it to you for any final questions, and then we'll wrap.
Great. Well, we had a couple of questions come across about the balance of content with imagery that were similar. So how do you create pages that have great imagery, especially if they're image intensive, without losing the benefit of the SEO perks that you get if there's text there? And then if we're creating pages with less text and we're dumbing down the text a bit, how do we still make it substantive for readers? So in other words, how do we make our pages SEO friendly and substantive?
Yes. So, I mean, we could do a whole seminar on that. So I'm going to give you a quick, a very quick answer, which will seem flip. And let me just give an example up here. But, so let's just assume that Accenture, who's been on the cutting edge of professional services marketing since it was formed by Arthur Andersen in the 50s and 60s, first on TV, first on the web, first on everything. They were first about leadership. Follow McKinsey's, okay, they're second. I assume that they are SEO wizards. All right? And so there's many ways to get SEO other than there are the behind the scenes, behind the page tools, which, you know, go talk to your SEO consultant and let them really give you a good solid schooling on that. But my only point is that I know Deloitte, I know Accenture, I know any of the firms we've shown you here. I mean, Cognizant's an IT firm. They've got SEO linked. All right, so it's possible. But talk to your SEO consultant, who's a real wizard at that, and we have some that we know if you need to be introduced. Second, on the visual versus verbal, it isn't pretty pictures. This is my last point. It's not pretty pictures. It's substantive information delivered in practically. All right, and I'll leave it at that, but I just don't need to come away with the notion that you're decorating the page. So go to some of these examples, see how they balance, you know, the if you will, the visual with the verbal. You know, one of my favorites still is McKinsey. Go take a look at how they've done the school on that. Okay? Jenny, we're at time, so I'll have you sign us off.
Great. Okay, thank you everybody for joining us today. Just a couple things in closing us out. We will be providing a full audio as well as presentation files within the next day or two. I have a list of all of your questions that I'm going to assign to Joe as a follow-up blog post. So don't worry if you have some questions. We will get those answered for you because there were really some great ones that came across. And then finally, be sure to follow us on Twitter at GBLTD or Facebook at Greenfield-Belzer. And if there's anything we can do to help y'all as you explore new websites or design, that's what we do and that's what we're here for, and that's how we love serving our clients. So please contact us if we can be of help. Thanks for being with us today, and we hope to talk to you soon.